Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to take on a big one. You know, that one topic in Portuguese grammar that can make even the pros a little nervous. Yep, we are demystifying the subjunctive. So let's just dive right in and see if we can make this whole thing a lot less scary.
Come on, we all have one, right? That one rule where you just kind of nod and smile, really hoping that nobody asks you to explain it or, actually use it in a sentence. For so many of us learning Portuguese, the subjunctive is that rule. But what if I told you it's not nearly as complicated as it looks?
Okay, the very first thing we need to do is a major mental shift. Ready? Stop thinking of the subjunctive as some kind of complicated tense. It's not just about when something happens. Instead, I want you to start thinking of it as a mood. It's how we talk about our feelings toward an action. Is it a doubt, a wish, a possibility? It's literally the grammar of what if.
And here's our game plan. First, we're going to really nail down that core idea, the mood of uncertainty. Then, we'll get into the secret weapon, the trigger words that basically tell you when to use it. We'll see them in action, look at a few must-know irregular verbs, and then, at the end, we'll put it all together into a super simple method you can start using today.
All right, part one, the mood of uncertainty. And you're going to hear me say this a lot because it's everything. It's not about when something is happening, it's about how certain we are that it's going to happen. It really is just a feeling. So this is the official line, the textbook definition. It's used to talk about an eventuality or uncertainty about the future. And the key part here is that it almost always shows up after these specific little words called conjunctions, words that introduce that feeling of doubt or maybe.
Which leads us perfectly into our next section, the subjunctive triggers. Seriously, think of these as little alarm bells in a sentence. The second you hear one, a little light should go off in your head saying, hey, the subjunctive is probably coming up. This turns it from a memorization nightmare into more of a pattern recognition game, much easier.
And these handy trigger words fall into four main buckets: concessive, conditional, final, and temporal. Now don't worry about those fancy grammar names. The ideas behind them are actually really simple, I promise.
So let's get to the good stuff. Let's see these triggers in the wild. This is where it all starts to make sense. We're going to walk through each of those categories with some real-world examples so you can actually see the patterns for yourself. First up, we've got the concessive conjunctions. All this means is that these words introduce some kind of obstacle or contradiction. You can think of this as the even though or the despite the fact category. It adds a bit of tension, a little doubt into the mix. So the words you're listening for here are things like embora, mesmo que, and ainda que. When you hear one of these, that is a huge clue that the subjunctive is right around the corner. Okay, check out this example. Mesmo que chova, even if it rains. Now, is it definitely going to rain? Nope, it's just a possibility, an uncertainty that might get in the way of our plan. And because of that trigger, mesmo que, the verb to rain, becomes chova. That's the subjunctive. Next up, our second category, conditional conjunctions. This is your classic what-if territory. These words set up a condition, a hypothesis, that has to be met before something else can happen. For these, you want to keep an ear out for words like caso, which means in case, desde que for provided that, and a menos que for unless. See how they all point to something that isn't a sure thing? It's a condition. And here is a perfect example. Caso seja necessário. Is it necessary? Well, we don't know yet, it's just a condition. That little trigger word, caso, signals the uncertainty, so the verb to be, ser, turns into its subjunctive form, seja. Okay, our third category is called final conjunctions. This one is all about purpose or a goal. It explains why you're doing something. You know, we do this so that this other thing, which isn't guaranteed yet, can happen.
And you're going to love this one because it's super simple. You are mostly just looking for two main triggers. Para que, which means so that, and a fin de que, in order that. That's pretty much it.
So let's look at how this works. Para que no te esqueças, so that you don't forget. The whole purpose of writing it down is to achieve a future goal, not forgetting. But is it guaranteed you won't forget? Well, no. That outcome is still up in the air, and that's why we use the subjunctive, esqueças. And that brings us to our last category, temporal conjunctions. Now these deal with time, but, and this is the important part, they deal with time in relation to a future event that hasn't happened yet. It's all about when something might happen down the road. The key triggers to listen for here are words like antes que, before, até que, until, and logo que, as soon as.
Notice how they all point to a moment in the future that is not right now. It is not a reality yet.
Take a look at this one. Logo que pasa, as soon as I can. So when exactly will I be able to call? We don't know. It's not a set time, it's a future possibility. The trigger logo que tells us this, so we use the subjunctive form of can, which is pasa. See the pattern?
Okay, so we've got a really good handle on when to use the subjunctive now, but what about the verbs themselves? Let's take a quick look at some of the most common irregular verbs. Think of these as the essential tools for your toolkit.
Now, we're not going to do a full-on grammar drill here, but just so you can get a feel for them, the verb ser becomes seja, ir becomes va, dar becomes de. You'll find you start to recognize these forms really fast once you know to listen for them.
So let's bring this all home. Let's put it all together. We've gone from looking at the subjunctive as this big, scary monster to hopefully seeing it as a pretty logical system. We've moved from confusion to clarity.
This is what I want you to take away. A super simple, three-step checklist for your brain. First, always think mood, not tense. Ask yourself, is this a sure thing, or is it a doubt, a wish, a condition? Second, listen for one of those trigger words we talked about. And third, connect that trigger word to that feeling of uncertainty about the future. That's the whole logic right there.
So really, the question isn't whether you can understand the subjunctive, because you totally have the tools now. The real question is, where are you going to hear it next? Is it going to be in a song, in a movie, in a conversation? Start listening for those triggers. I bet you'll be amazed how often you hear them, now that you know what you're looking for.